Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Good Dram Show with me, Chris Goodrum. Right, this afternoon what are we doing? Well, we're taking another break from whiskey and we're going to have a look at some more gin. I must admit I was never the world's biggest fan of gins, but over the last sort of few years I've certainly seemed to have tasted quite a fair few of them and, you know, kind of got into them, to be honest with you. So I thought it would be interesting to do another episode of the show on them, and I picked four, obviously, two English and two American gins. I mean, there seems to be sort of small boutique gin producers popping up all over the world these days, so I thought these four would make quite an interesting little tasting. So without further ado, I shall introduce this afternoon's lineup then. Right, okay, so the first one we're looking at is, I'm tasting these, by the way, in alcoholic strength from the lowest obviously to the highest. The first one we're looking at is a Californian gin called D.H. Cran. This is quite an interesting gin, like I said, distilled in California, and what do I say it's interesting? Well, it's the only one that has a single distillation. Should make it interesting. It's apparently distilled in a copper Stoufler alembic still made in France. Now, as far as I'm aware, alembic stills are the type of stills that are used in the Armagnac production, sort of like tend to be sort of fairly small and squat little things, but this is apparently sort of a more high-tech version. It's also interesting in the fact that the still is direct fired rather than sort of heated by steam or what have you, gas. And it's also interesting because they don't tend to use very much in the way of botanicals. In actual fact, they only use 6 botanicals, which is quite unusual because most of the gins tend to use around about sort of 8 or 9 botanicals. They use apparently Italian juniper, Moroccan coriander, Californian lemon and grapefruit. Well, I suppose you would when they grow a lot of it there. Florida orange, again, it's, I wouldn't quite say local, but you know. And Thai ginger. So that's the D.H. Cran. Interestingly enough, I did taste this once before back in about 2008, and I don't think I was quite as sort of well versed in gin, and thought it was a bit sort of simple and straightforward. So it'll be interesting to retaste that particular gin again. The other 3 gins are basically, because various reps have called in over the past sort of couple of months with samples, so this one is no exception. You have to excuse the horrible one. This is apparently the Portobello Road number 171 gin, bottled at 42%. This is apparently the brainchild of some chap called Jake Berger, who runs the Portobello Star Inn, which is also the home to the Ginstitute, which apparently is sort of quite an interesting place, although I've never been, which is, you know, goes on about the history and of gin making. And also the other interesting thing is that apparently you can blend your own gin together. It has spirit which is, I believe, been infused with single botanicals, so you can mix them and create your own interesting gin. So that I think would be quite interesting. Like I said, bottled at 42%. The third gin we have here is the number 209. What is it called? Number 209? Well, it's I have no idea. It's distilled in San Francisco, 4 times distilled from, of course it's the 209 distillery, isn't it? Duh. Sorry, having a bit of a Homer Simpson moment there. Apparently it's, like I said, 4 times distilled from Midwestern corn, and the interesting thing is that the water they use is pure snow melt from the Sierra Nevada mountains. So, yeah, interesting. Nothing like a bit of a twist, I suppose. This uses quite a number of botanicals, including juniper, bergamot, orange and lemon peel, cardamom pod, cassia bark, angelica root, and coriander seeds. So that should be quite interesting. Don't think I mentioned the Portobello Road botanicals, and that is juniper, lemon peel, bitter orange peel, coriander seed, orris root, angelica root, cassia bark, licorice, and nutmeg. Hope you're following all of that, because I sure as hell aren't. And finally, the last one again, another English gin. This is the Broker's gin. Now they do 2 bottlings, so they do a 40% bottling, but this is the slightly higher strength bottling, which is bottled at 47%. So interesting. It's again 4 times distilled, this time obviously from English wheat, and it is distilled at the Langley distillery, which is somewhere near Birmingham apparently. The botanicals that are used in this particular one again are juniper, coriander seed, orris root, nutmeg, cassia bark, cinnamon, licorice, orange and lemon peel, and angelica root. So hopefully this should be quite an interesting little tasting. And well, let's kick off then, shall we? Right, okay, so let's start with the Crown then, or the DH Crown as I should say. Right, let's see what the nose gives us. It's fresh, plenty of juniper. I mean, it's amazingly clean for a single distillation. I mean, there's a little bit of sort of heavy oils just sort of in the background. Sort of almost kind of wheaty note possibly. I must admit I don't know what the base spirit is distilled from, but it's got that sort of slightly wheaty kind of character. Plenty of citrus, like I said, quite fresh. Getting some orange, a little not quite herbal, more sort of grassy, possibly lemongrass, which I'm guessing is, although there's no lemongrass in it, I can only assume must be the Thai ginger that's giving it that sort of note, because it's not sort of overly gingery or rooty or anything like that. It's nice, it's fresh. Palate. Full, slightly creamy. Again, still has quite a nice freshness, plenty of juniper, a lot of citrus. I'm certainly getting the grapefruit now on the finish. Actually really quite complex. Some nice sweet, soft spice, which is obviously coming from the coriander, just checking the notes. It's a little bit short, it has to be said. I mean, it's a pleasant enough gin. Like I said, fairly gentle, fairly fresh. Yeah, nice starter, that one. Right, okay, on to the Portobello Road gin. Like I said, distilled at the Thames Distillers down in London, which seems to distill pretty much most of the sort of artisan stroke boutique kind of gins that are appearing on the market. But anyway, they all have different recipes. It must be a bloody nightmare, I reckon, to sort of like, right, okay, whose gin are we distilling today? Oh right, yes, we've got to have that, and so they'll probably have vats of the stuff all over the place, you know. So anyway, enough of that. Let's see what the gin is like then, shall we? Again, it's got a sort of a nice oiliness to it. Again, sort of It seems to be a bit wheaty, citrusy. Quite fresh. Not a huge amount of juniper in actual fact. I'm getting a lot more citrus than I am juniper. It's got a nice sort of soft spiciness, a bit of coriander, and that sort of cassia bark. Yeah, it's full. It's, you know, it's unassuming. It's quite pleasant in actual fact. Palate. That's an interesting palate. Quite fresh, but at the same time quite milky. Has that sort of quite soft, not quite creamy, sort of, like I said, lightly milky kind of character to it. Again, not a huge amount of juniper. A lot more emphasis on the citrus, the orange, the lemon. Lovely, lovely length. Really long. Sort of spices, kind of like just sitting quite pleasantly in the side of the mouth. And that is really, really nice. That is very, very good gin. Like I say, it's not too heavy on the juniper, more citrus, and yeah, I kind of like that. That's really, really nice. Good gin. Right, okay, on to the 209 then, from the 209 distillery. Okay, let's see what the nose gives us. Oh, that's pungent. Oh, a lot of juniper there. Really intense. Oh, citrus. Again, some sort of barky spice, but you can smell that this is you know, 46%. This has definitely got more pungency than the other two. But that's a really juniper laced nose. It's pleasant. Again, it's got a nice freshness to it. I mean, you'd expect that. In fact, it's distilled 4 times, so no impurities in the spirit. A little bit of angelica root coming through, but that's, you know, again, it's a really nice, quite appealing nose. Now you can tell that's made from corn. It's got that kind of lightly burnt caramelly corn character. I mean, if you've tasted a lot of American whiskies like I have, it's almost instantly recognisable. I mean, it's not off-putting, it's just different, it's interesting. Again, lots and lots of juniper, lots of citrus on the finish, a lot of alcohol, really intense. I mean, I'm guessing this would work quite nicely with tonic water, because it won't kind of dilute it too much. Long, it's got some nice crystallized angelica root. You get some nice gingery notes, gentle spices, a bit drying, neat because of the alcohol, but yeah, all told, not too bad at all. Right, okay, and finally let's have a look at the brokers then. Like I said, again, 4 times distilled English wheat from somewhere near Birmingham apparently. Let's see what the nose gives us. That's another intense nose. Again, plenty of juniper, nutmeg, rooty spice, bit of citrus, real pungency to it. again, you can certainly feel this has got some alcohol. Again, really clean. You don't really kind of get any indication of the base spirit. Certainly not having it distilled 4 times, like with the 209. There's certainly not 209. There's certainly no kind of indication of what it was originally distilled for. There's maybe a little bit of wheatiness. Maybe I'm just kind of searching for it. I don't know. It's getting quite sweet now. The citrus notes are getting sort of quite sweet, a little bit sugary. Yeah, again, it's a pleasant nose. Palate. Well, that's a big gin. Amplified, lots and lots of juniper, lots and lots of spice, nutmeg, coriander, bark. Big, everything's big, it's all amplified, it's huge. Again, I think they've obviously designed this to be used with a mixer, because then you're not diluting the flavours so much. Getting a little bit of an alcohol burn on the aftertaste now, but again, I don't think too many people will probably be drinking this neat. A little bit of bitterness, but you know, really intense. It's nice. It's pleasant. Like I said, it's kind of really ramped up. It's a big gin, you know. So yeah, interesting. Right, okay, so let's sum this little tasting up then. So, right, 4 really interesting gins, I think. You know, differing styles, differing alcohol levels. The Crown, yeah, it's okay. It's pleasant. It's surprising that they can get such a clean spirit from a single distillation. But the other interesting thing is you do kind of get a natural sort of oiliness to it. I mean, I kind of like that. I like to know sort of, you know, what my spirit is sort of like, you know, originated from. I like the oiliness. I like things like Plymouth with that sort of pungency. And if it had a little bit more length and a little bit more complexity, I would say that was an epic gin. But as gins go, I think that's quite pleasant. It's nice. The Portobello Road, I like it because it's not so heavy on the juniper. I mean, I know gin's supposed to have juniper in it, and I think some gins can be just sort of like, you know, too heavy on the juniper. So I kind of like it from that respect. It has more freshness, although it has, in saying that, it kind of like has this kind of milky kind of character, which I think is quite interesting. It's easy to drink at neat. 42% just seems to be about sort of like the right ABV for it, and it's not particularly expensive, and we stock it, so you know, it's good gin. I like it. It's nice. The 209, yeah, okay. It's okay. Again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's not bad spirit at all. It's probably a little bit intense for sort of drinking on its own, and although that sort of slightly burnt caramel corn character is not exactly off-putting, it's interesting because, like I said, I like to know where my spirits come from, and it certainly has that characteristic, even though it's been distilled 4 times and by rights should be pretty neutral. Yeah, it's nice. It's pleasant. Can't really say anything more than that. And the Brokers, again, you know, probably a little bit too alcoholic to drink neat, but I think it would probably work well with tonic, because it's just big. It's just like everything's turned up to 11. You know, it's like, you know, here we have huge juniper, huge spices, huge citrus, huge alcohol. I kind of like the bottle as well. It's quite funky with a little hat, but that's beside the point. But I think, you know, again, a really nice gin, and I suppose it's all about sort of how you like your gins and what you tend to do with it. If you tend to sort of, you know, put a fair amount of tonic in, then obviously going for something with a slightly higher alcoholic strength is going to, you know, keep the flavours, you know, when it's diluted. I must admit that I think, you know, if you put tonic water with sort of something around about 40%, you're going to dilute it so far that you're probably not going to taste a huge amount of the gin. But certainly if you're bottling at 46, 47%, I think you're obviously going to keep that intensity. So yeah, interesting tasting, I think. Standout bottling for me, I think, like I said, is probably the Portobello Star. I think it's really nice. It's not too heavy on the juniper, with plenty of citrus, nice mouth feel, nice to drink it undiluted. Yeah, I mean, you can argue that the Broker's is impressive because of, you know, it's complete, everything's amplified, but I think sort of for pure sort of enjoyment, I think that the Portobello Star is certainly my favourite of these four. So there you have it. I hope you've enjoyed this this episode of the show. I hope this will maybe you know, tempt you to sort of have a look at some interesting artisan gins, you know, and move away from the usual ones. So I guess there's not a lot else to say apart from good Dram and good afternoon.